The 4th Annual Law Enforcement Basketball Tournament is coming, March 17th through 23rd. Law enforcement basketball teams from throughout the Caribbean will compete as we display the Caribbean spirit of camaraderie. Dominica, Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos, Trinidad and Tobago, all competing for the prestigious championship trophy. But they have to go through the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and Her Majesty's prisons before they can meet defending champions, the Royal Bahamas Police Force. There will also be a clash of the East versus West Senior Boys High School Championship, along with the annual slam dunk and three-point competition. The winner will receive a scholarship prize. That's right, the 4th Annual Law Enforcement Basketball Tournament, March 17th through 23rd. You don't want to miss this one.
The Deputy Prime Minister today answering questions about his ties to BPC.
I have no further affiliations with them.
The Bahamas National Trust weighs in on oil exploration, legal action expected against the police.
False imprisonment, malicious prosecution, and assault and battery.
Urban renewal officers recognized, plus a Caribbean fashion reality show to feature two Bahamians.
And it's my time.
I'm Nakia DeVoe, and this is NB12 Weekend. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us this Saturday for NB12 Weekend. Deputy Prime Minister Philip Brave Davis is the latest to defend his past relationship with the Bahamas Petroleum Company after the Free National Movement called for disclosure of his dealings with the oil company. Davis says he no longer has ties to the company and called the entire discussion irrelevant.
I have no further affiliations with them. In fact, even before being elected, they had already engaged other counsel. And I am now in a different capacity. And I resent the inference that they will draw that I will allow any decision that I would have to make, or I would be involved in a decision that would in any way compromise the best interests of our country.
Prime Minister Perry Christie previously admitted that he worked as a consultant for Davis & Co. and provided advice for BPC, a client of the law firm where Davis is senior partner. After Minister of the Environment Kenred Dorset announced last Sunday that the government would allow exploratory drilling ahead of an oil referendum, Free National Movement Chairman Darren Cash called on Davis, Christie, and PLP Senator Jerome Gomez, who worked as BPC's resident manager, to come clean with their dealings with the oil company.
I think it's an irrelevant red herring. Again, it's just what I resent is it's this attempt to taint the character and integrity of myself and others. I mean, I'm a lawyer, and I don't want to, and I will not point fingers at what happens with persons in their camp. But perhaps they need to take the baby out of their own eyes before they start to look at to see whether the baby is in somebody else's eyes.
They were also called on by Cash to disclose how much they were paid by BPC, information that Davis did not divulge.
It was my firm that got a retainer, and we were paid for the work we done. We were not on a salary.
The first Christie administration granted BPC 5 oil exploration licenses. NB12 also asked if the government would consider granting licenses to other companies interested in exploring Bahamian waters.
It's a competitive market, the oil industry is, and if there are others who are willing to come in and do the same thing that BPC is doing, I think consideration will be given to it.
Gomez last week defended his ties to BPC and accused Cash of making political mischief. Today, the Prime Minister refused to speak to us on the issue and said he will publicly address it in Parliament tomorrow. There are extreme views on both sides of the debate for and against oil exploration and drilling in Bahamian waters. On one side, there are those who oppose any type of exploration and exploitation. Then there are others who say if there are resources the country can profit from, they need to be extracted. But where do environmentalists stand on this issue? Well, the Bahamas National Trust has not laid out an official position on exploratory oil drills in the country, but BNT Director Eric Carey says the trust has a lot to consider.
The BNT has not determined a formal position on oil. I can assure you this matter is going to be discussed at our upcoming board meeting. And there are going to be a number of views expressed. What I think is important, Ms. McNeil, is that there is information provided to the public. A lot of the questions have come to me over the past couple of days. Oh, what's the impact? How does it happen? Could there be a spill when they're doing exploration, and how would they mitigate against that? The answers are there to be had.
Last week, Dorset said exploration data would verify if the country has enough petroleum reserves to justify drilling would not be available until the end of 2014 or early 2015. Therefore, a referendum on the issue would likely not be held before the second half of 2015, depending on the outcome of the exploration. Carey tells NB12 the BNT will encourage a public forum to discuss the issues surrounding oil drilling, including the need for a regulatory regime.
We certainly support and will insist upon is that there is a proper regulatory regime, that there is a full and comprehensive review of the environmental impact assessment for exploration before any approvals are given. And the Minister has indicated that that is the process he's going to follow. He's indicated that the AG is currently drafting regulations.
Carey says he has reached out to oil companies and other experts to make presentations to a public forum. He also intends to invite government representatives, but Carey points out the Bahamas has already been exposed to the possible implications of oil drilling.
Cuba has already exposed the Bahamas to the risk. And the Great Bahama Bank, where so much of our fishery takes place, is, they're 12 miles. They are drilling a well 12 miles from the Bahamian territorial waters. What happens if they find exploitable quantities, which could bring lots of economic benefits to the Bahamas? Minister Halkidas has been on radio. He's getting gray hairs trying to figure out where to find money. And so will the Bahamian public say to him, there's money in the ground, don't bring it out?
Carey says he hopes the first public forums on oil drilling can begin in the next 2 to 3 weeks, well before a possible referendum. And speaking of health of our waters, concerns have been raised once again about the future of conch in the Bahamas due to overfishing and exportation of the species. The Bahamas National Trust recently brought the issue to the forefront, and it was even addressed in the House of Assembly last week. Well, now fishermen are weighing in. President of the Bahamas Commercial Fishers Alliance, Adrian LaRota, said they're willing to work with the various parties to protect conch. They're pushing for a better regulation in terms of harvesting.
The way conch is harvested now will lead to a decimation of the species in no time, okay? Because you have people who are using breathing apparatus to go into deeper water to harvest conch. They're going directly into the conch nurseries, which is 200-300 feet below the sea, where before Bahamians would not dive or would not go, because that's the nursery for the conch. You have to allow them to go down there, live, breathe, then come up to the shallow water. You harvest them in the shallow water. So now we have people who are actually going down into the nursery and harvesting the conch right on the conch bed. That is dangerous.
LaRota said they're also calling for more marine protected areas so that conch can mature and reproduce without disruption. He says while fishermen feel the conch population isn't in danger yet, they want to avoid it even getting close to that point.
That will then give the species some time to recover because there'll be no fish zones. Okay? Barring that, we're going to have to take drastic measure of having a closed season. That's something we don't want.
He said the Alliance assisted with recent studies of the conch population, and based on the findings, the Bahamas isn't in danger of having the fishery collapse in the near future. But it is time to put more focus on the conservation of conch and other marine species that are crucial to the industry and the marine environment. In other news, an attorney found himself on the other side of the law back in 2011 when he was arrested and later charged with assault with a deadly weapon. But his story didn't end there. As Christina McNeil tells us in this next report, that attorney has not only been vindicated of all charges, but now he plans to hold the police accountable for what he feels was nothing less than gross injustice.
Attorney Mario McCartney's life changed forever 2 years ago after his wife told him she feared she was being followed. The events that unfolded next not only opened McCartney's eyes to the other side of the criminal justice system, but also to the struggle for justice in this country.
On June 7, 2011, McCartney was arrested and later charged for assault with a deadly weapon. It was alleged that McCartney, while at his residence, unlawfully assaulted Elric Colley with a shotgun. Colley is the man McCartney's wife claimed followed her to and from the family's home. When McCartney threatened to call the police, Colley, the complainant, fled the scene. In the meantime, officers from the Arawak Key police station visited the home to take McCartney's statement. That's when Colley returned to the McCartney family's home with officers from the Nassau Street police station who arrested and charged McCartney.
It has been rough. The process has been rough. I was arrested without knowing what I was arrested for. I was charged without knowing what I was being charged for, only to find out these criminal offenses, alleged criminal offenses, at my first appearance. That is ill treatment by the police.
McCartney says his family was stalked and harassed 3 times prior to his arrest. He says reports were made to police, but he later learned that police had no record of the reports. As an attorney, McCartney says when he was sentenced to 9 months in prison, it was his first time on the other side of the law. He says what he discovered was eye-opening.
It's been a wake-up call as to what really goes on in our country today. It also shows the fact that the miscarriage of justice that goes on in the Bahamas is severely high. The fact that you have persons who, with or without attorneys, they head to trial, being convicted and being innocent of those charges, it does shine a light on the impact of what goes on in this country today. It has come to the point where it has become even psychologically challenging. To the effect that your credibility is at stake, your image and your professional reputation is at stake. It's quite difficult to see when others look at you as, shouldn't you be in jail? Because obviously, in the Bahamas, it's guilty until proven innocent.
The Court of Appeal on February 14, 2013 vindicated McCartney of all charges and the conviction and sentence were quashed. But McCartney says his story doesn't end there. Throughout the entire ordeal, McCartney maintained his innocence and contended that he was acting in self-defense when he stood outside his home with a licensed shotgun.
During the trial, as new evidence was discovered, McCartney and his attorney Mark Roll filed a formal complaint. While McCartney couldn't go into detail about what that evidence was, he says the police can expect to hear a lot more about this matter.
We will write to the Complaints and Corruptions Unit to have that procedure continued, and I have instructed my attorney here to commence legal proceedings for false imprisonment, malicious prosecution, and assault and battery on part of both the complainant and the police force.
This comes amid public scrutiny of the police force following numerous complaints about police officers acting inappropriately and the launch of an investigation into the deaths of 2 men while in police custody. McCartney, however, says he has not lost faith in the justice system and sees the need for proper legal representation for all defendants, including those who may be innocent of the crimes they are charged with. Meanwhile, McCartney has resumed his work as an attorney at the family practice Lex Justice. While the charges continue to haunt him, he says he and his family are trying to move on. Reporting for NB12, I'm Christina McNeil. Coming up after the break, Seventh-day Adventists call for an end to discrimination.